For decades, the whole idea of alien abduction has been this huge battleground, right? You're either a believer, totally convinced these are terrifying physical events, or you're a skeptic, dismissing it all as just fantasy. But what if both sides are missing the point? What if the truth is something way stranger and honestly a lot more personal?
Well, in this explainer, we're going to explore a really fascinating third path. It's called the shamanic dreaming hypothesis. And what it suggests is that these encounters are absolutely real, but their reality is much more like a dream than it is a historical event. It's a profound experience that needs to be interpreted, not just investigated.
You see, you really can't tell the story of abduction research without talking about hypnotic regression. For investigators and for the experiencers themselves, it was seen as the golden key, the one thing that could unlock missing time and finally figure out what really happened. The only problem is, that key, it might not have fit the lock at all.
So to understand why that key doesn't fit, we basically have to put hypnosis itself on the stand. We need to take a hard look at the very assumptions that the entire field of abduction research was built on for decades.
So traditional abduction research really rests on what you could call the myth of recovered memory. And it's got three main parts. First, it assumes that missing time is just a simple gap in a historical record. Second, it assumes the memory of what happened is just blocked by trauma. And third, and this is the big one, it assumes hypnosis is like a magic key that can unlock a perfect, crystal clear video recording of the event. But what if our memory doesn't work like a video camera at all?
And this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of the problem. Modern science is pretty clear on this. Hypnosis can be incredibly effective at, well, implanting false memories, not just recovering real ones. And that whole idea of repressing traumatic events so much that you get amnesia, yeah, turns out that's pretty much a myth. We tend to remember trauma all too well.
And look, this isn't just theory. We saw how dangerous this can be back in the 1990s during the whole memory wars controversy. Regression hypnosis led to people developing these incredibly elaborate, emotionally charged memories of events that simply never happened. It caused so much personal and legal chaos, and it proved that the tool wasn't just unreliable, it could be actively and dangerously misleading.
So that brings us to the real question, the one that opens up this whole new hypothesis. If hypnosis isn't a forensic tool for digging up facts, then what in the world is it doing? What are these powerful, life-changing experiences that people are having in that hypnotist chair? Well, to answer that, you need a completely new perspective.
We need a totally new lens to look through. Instead of trying to prove or disprove a physical event, we need a framework that actually honors the power of the experience itself, one that doesn't try to force it into a little box it was never meant to fit inside.
And here it is, the shamanic dreaming hypothesis. Now, this doesn't dismiss the encounters as just a dream or fake. No way. It says they are profoundly real experiences, but it reclassifies them as being dreamlike. And just like our dreams at night, their value isn't in their factual accuracy, but in their symbolic meaning and their power to transform us.
Now, thinking this way requires a pretty big shift in our entire worldview. You see, most of us in the West grew up with what's called a monophasic view. Waking life is the only thing that's real, and dreams are just, fluff. But many other cultures are polyphasic. They see waking and dreaming as equally valid phases of consciousness, each one offering its own kind of truth. This hypothesis is basically asking us to try on a more polyphasic worldview.
The moment we make that shift, something pretty incredible happens. The whole narrative of power, it just completely changes. Just look at this comparison. On one hand, you have regression hypnosis. It kind of casts the person as a passive victim whose broken memory needs to be fixed by an expert. But on the other hand, you have shamanic dream work. It sees the person as an active co-creator of the experience. The goal isn't to establish facts, it's to find personal meaning in something profound and mysterious.
And this right here is the central ethical foundation of this whole approach. The power is given back to the individual. No researcher, no hypnotist, nobody gets to tell them what their experience really means. They are the sole and ultimate authority. That simple rule changes everything.
What's really cool is that this new approach isn't just about looking back and reacting to the past. It actually opens up a path to be proactive. I mean, what if we could use this dream-like reality to actively explore consciousness and maybe even initiate contact ourselves? And that is the radical idea behind something called DreamSETI, or D-SETI. Forget about giant radio telescopes pointed at the stars. What if the most effective search for intelligence isn't out there, but in here? What if we use the one universal medium we all share every single night, our dreams? This approach suggests that through something like dream telepathy, every one of us could become a potential ambassador to the cosmos.
Okay, this all sounds pretty fascinating, I know, but I also know the big question that's probably on your mind. What about the physical evidence? You know, the weird scars and marks that some people report? Well, the shamanic dreaming hypothesis has a pretty startling answer for that too.
So this is where it gets really strange. Some people wake up from these experiences with very specific, very physical marks on their bodies, like a perfectly straight line of little puncture-like dots. Researchers have a name for this, dial, which stands for dots in a line.
And as you can see here, these dial marks have some very consistent characteristics. They always look like this line of dots. They're often linked to dreams of ETs or missing time. And the way they heal is unusual too, affecting just the top layer of skin. But here is the most mind-bending part. When researchers analyze the spacing of these dots, they often find sophisticated geometric patterns, things like bisection and even the golden ratio.
This hypothesis flips the script on what that evidence means. These marks aren't seen as scars from some physical medical procedure. In this view, the marks are the procedure. They are a form of direct communication, inscribed right on the skin, where the geometry itself is the message.
And this brings us right back to the beginning. These physical marks don't prove a physical kidnapping. What they do is they authenticate the reality of the experience. They serve as this undeniable physical invitation to take the dreamlike reality of these encounters seriously and really engage with what they mean.
So ultimately, it's all about empowerment. It's about shifting your perspective from being a powerless victim to being an active participant, a co-creator, in one of the deepest mysteries of human consciousness.
So in the end, this hypothesis suggests the big question isn't, is it real or is it just a dream? It invites us to ask something far more profound. If our reality is a lot more dreamlike than we ever thought, who or what are we dreaming with?